Hello there, and a very warm welcome. Whether you're listening in the quiet hours of the morning or settling in for the night, I'm so glad you're here. I often wonder where and at what time these stories find you, so if you feel like sharing in the comments, I would be delighted to know where in the world you're watching from. Tonight, our journey takes us to a place of strange comforts and quiet understanding. We're going to spend a day behind the bar at the Gulping Maw, a tavern where the clientele are not your usual adventurers or townsfolk. They are the creatures from the shadows, the beasts of myth, the monsters. And our guide will be the one person who knows all their secrets, the bartender. So take a slow breath, find a comfortable position, and let's begin. The day begins not with a rooster's crow, but with a profound and heavy silence. This is the hour before opening, a small private pocket of time that the bartender treasures above all else. It is the only time of day when the tavern, the Gulping Maw, truly belongs to him. The air in here is not empty. It is thick, a rich, layered tapestry of last night's stories. It is a ghost soup of scents. You can still smell the sharp, sour tang of spilled bog water ale, a scent like wet earth and regret. Underneath that, there is the faint, almost pleasant aroma of brimstone, a lingering perfume left behind by a group of particularly boisterous imps who were celebrating something in the rafters. And woven through it all is the damp, musky scent of wet fur, a memory of the old minotaur who sat in his usual corner, and the sharp, clean, almost electric tang of ozone, the fading signature of a will-o'-the-wisp who floated in for a brief, silent drink before vanishing back into the swamp. This unique and potent potpourri is the tavern's natural state, its resting breath. In this quiet, the light itself seems to move differently. A few stubborn beams of the early morning sun manage to pierce the thick, grimy film that coats the tavern's windows. They are not bright, cheerful shafts of light. They are pale, weary travelers who have fought a long battle to get inside, and they arrive tired and diffuse. They illuminate the air, revealing a slow, lazy blizzard of dust motes, each one a tiny, forgotten world, drifting and swirling in the still air. They are as thick and as slow as snowflakes in a windless sky, and they settle on every surface, a soft, gray blanket of time itself. Behind the bar stands our guide for the day. Let's call him Alien. He is a man of indeterminate age, with the weary eyes of someone who has seen far too much, and the steady hands of someone who has learned not to be surprised by any of it. He is neither large nor small, neither handsome nor ugly. He is simply present, a quiet, sturdy anchor in a sea of chaos. His day begins with a ritual, a slow, methodical ceremony that sets the tone for everything that is to follow. He takes a clean, damp cloth, one of the few truly clean things in the entire establishment, and he begins to wipe down the bar. The bar itself is a magnificent, monstrous thing. It is a single massive log of petrified ironwood, dragged from an ancient, fossilized forest centuries ago. Its surface is not smooth. It is a landscape of history, scarred with the deep, gouging claw marks of countless impatient patrons, pockmarked with the sizzle burns of carelessly placed acidic drinks, and stained with rings from 1,000 mugs. Elian's cloth moves across this rugged terrain with a gentle, wet rasping sound. Shh. It is a meditative rhythm, a mantra of cleanliness in a world of grime. He moves with an unhurried, practiced grace. He is not fighting the dirt. He is merely negotiating a temporary truce with it. The only other sounds are the soft, incidental noises of his work. The gentle clink as he nudges a misplaced mug back into its proper place. The quiet sigh of his own breathing, a soft, steady counterpoint to the profound silence of the room. This ritual is his way of taking ownership of the space, of preparing his stage for the night's performance. He is not just a bartender, he is a curator of this strange, living museum. As he works, his gaze sweeps over the tavern, taking in its unique and wonderful bones. The floor is made of uneven flagstone, each stone worn smooth by centuries of inhuman footfalls. It is permanently stained with a constellation of spills and splatters, a Jackson Pollock painting of monster libations. The chairs and tables are a chaotic, mismatched family of furniture, each piece custom-built or heavily modified to accommodate the tavern's diverse clientele. There are low, wide benches, sanded smooth for the delicate undersides of serpentine creatures like lamias or gorgons. There are massive, reinforced stools, thick as tree trunks, designed to bear the considerable weight of an ogre or a troll. In one dark corner stands a single, impossibly tall, thin chair, almost like a perch, reserved for a client who is mostly legs. And near the great stone fireplace, there is a large, worn-out circular rug, the designated sleeping spot for any hellhounds who might wander in, seeking warmth. Every piece of furniture tells a story of accommodation, of a quiet, practical acceptance of the fact that the world is filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, and every single one of them, at some point, gets thirsty. This is the heart of the Gulping Maw's philosophy. It is a place of function over form, of comfort over aesthetics. It is not beautiful, it is not charming, but it works. And for the creatures who are shunned, feared, or hunted everywhere else, a place that simply works is a rare and precious sanctuary. Elian finishes wiping down the bar. He runs his hand over the dark, clean-smelling wood, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. The quiet is his. The calm is his. The dust motes dance in the pale light, and the ghosts of last night's patrons slumber peacefully in the air. For now, all is well. But he knows this peace is a fragile, temporary thing. He can feel it in the old, petrified wood of the bar. He can hear it in the groaning silence of the rafters above. Soon, the quiet will be broken by a sound, a slow, agonizing, deeply familiar creak, the sound of the great iron-banded door and the first customer of the day. The chaos is coming, but for these last few precious moments, there is only the bartender, his clean bar, and the quiet before the creek. With the bar now gleaming with a damp, temporary cleanliness, Elian's next ritual begins. He selects a large, heavy iron key from a hook behind the bar, a key so old and worn that it feels more like a religious artifact than a simple tool. He moves to the far end of the room, to a heavy, reinforced trapdoor set into the flagstone floor. The key fits into the lock with a solid, satisfying clunk. With a low grunt of effort, he lifts the heavy door, revealing a set of steep stone steps that descend into a cool, damp darkness. This is the entrance to the cellar, the bartender's private sanctuary and his personal laboratory. The air that wafts up from below is different from the air in the tavern. It is cooler, cleaner, and it carries the scent of damp earth, sweet fermentation, and something else, something faintly electric and alive. He lights a small oil-burning lantern, its warm, gentle glow pushing back the shadows, and he begins his descent. The cellar of the Gulping Maw is not a place of neat, orderly rows of dusty wine bottles and oaken casks. That is a cellar for a human tavern, a place of predictable vintages and stable chemistry. Elian's cellar is a living, breathing, and occasionally pulsating ecosystem of strange and wonderful libations. It is less a storeroom and more a menagerie. As he reaches the bottom of the stairs, the lantern light reveals the strange inhabitants of this subterranean world. In one corner rests a large, semi-translucent, pulsating sack, easily the size of a large dog. It is a pale greenish color, and it swells and contracts with a slow, rhythmic, almost hypnotic motion, like a giant sleeping lung. This is the source of the tavern's most popular drink, bog water ale. It is a living organism, a symbiotic colony of yeast and algae that slowly filters swamp water and ferments it into a thick, murky, and surprisingly potent brew. Next to it, on a raised stone platform, sits a large, crystalline vat. The vat itself seems to be grown, not carved, its facets catching the lantern light and fracturing it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Inside, a pale golden liquid swirls with a gentle inner luminescence. Floating within this liquid are dozens of tiny pinprick lights that drift and dance like fireflies in a jar. This is the Glimmer-Wisp mead. The tiny lights are actual glimmer-wisps, tiny, harmless spirits of pure light and joy who are drawn to the sweet, fermented honey nectar. Their presence infuses the mead with its signature effervescence and a faint tickling sensation on the tongue. And in the farthest, darkest corner of the cellar, there is the most dangerous and revered of all the tavern's offerings. It is a barrel, but it is not made of wood. It is fashioned from some strange, dark, non-reflective metal, and it is covered in faint, swirling runes that seem to shift and move when you're not looking directly at them. The barrel is sealed, but it hums with a low, almost subsonic energy, a deep, resonant thrum that you can feel in your teeth. A small, crudely painted label on the side reads simply, "Nectar of the Void." No one knows exactly what it is, but they know it is very, very old. Elian's task this morning is to prepare these beverages for the day's service. This is not simply a matter of turning a spigot. This is a delicate, precise art form, a quiet alchemy that requires deep knowledge and a steady hand. He approaches the pulsating sack of bog-water ale first. The spigot is actually a small sharpened bone tap that must be inserted into a specific, slightly tougher membrane on the sack's surface. He does this with a practiced, gentle push. A thick, greenish-brown liquid begins to ooze out. But the process is not complete. The ale is unfiltered, and it is teeming with the tiny, harmless, but generally undesirable tadpoles that are a natural byproduct of its fermentation. Elian holds a large clay jug beneath the tap, but over the mouth of the jug, he has placed a special filter made of fine woven reeds. The ale flows through the filter, which catches the wriggling tadpoles, leaving only the pure, murky brew to collect in the jug. It is a slow process, and he waits with a patient, practiced stillness until the jug is full. He then carefully removes the bone tap, and the membrane on the living sack seals itself with a soft, wet squelch. Next, he moves to the glimmer-wisp mead. This beverage is as delicate as the bogwater ale is robust. The crystalline vat has no tap. To serve it, he must use a special glass siphon, a long, curved tube that he gently lowers into the glowing liquid. The mead must never touch metal. A chemical reaction between the wisp's energy and any common metal would instantly corrode it, ruining both the drink and the vessel. He places his thumb over one end of the siphon and draws the liquid up, his movements slow and graceful, careful not to disturb the dancing lights within. He decants the glowing mead into a series of thick glass flagons, which he will take up to the bar. The wisps within the flagons continue to swirl and glow, a silent, beautiful promise of the gentle intoxication to come. Finally, he approaches the last barrel, the nectar of the void. He treats this one with a special reverence and a deep, abiding respect. He does not tap it, he does not open it. There is a small, specialized spigot near the bottom, made of the same strange dark metal as the barrel itself. He places a small, thick ceramic cup beneath it. He does not touch the spigot with his bare hands. He uses a pair of long-handled iron tongs to slowly, carefully turn the handle. A single drop of liquid, as black and as deep as a starless night sky, forms at the tip of the spigot. It hangs there for a moment, seeming to absorb the lantern light around it, before falling into the cup with a soft, almost silent plink. He turns the spigot off. That one drop is all he needs. He knows from long and one particularly memorable experience that to touch the nectar with bare skin is to invite a creeping, absolute numbness that can last for hours. The drop in the cup will be diluted with 10 parts water, and even then, it will be a potent, mind-altering concoction, favored by creatures who wish to briefly forget the constraints of their own physical forms. It is a drink for ghosts, for elementals, and for very, very sad sorcerers. With his 3 jugs of prepared beverages, Elian's work in the cellar is done. He has handled the living, the glowing, and the void-touched with equal parts skill and care. This is his unique expertise. He is not just a man who serves drinks. He is a handler of volatile substances, a keeper of strange life forms, a quiet alchemist who understands the delicate and often dangerous chemistry of his monstrous clientele. He knows that the wrong filter, the wrong vessel, or a single careless touch could lead to a disaster ranging from a mildly disgusting drink to a serious metaphysical incident. His knowledge is deep, his hands are steady, and his respect for the strange spirits he serves is absolute. He picks up his lantern and his prepared flagons and begins the slow ascent back up the stone steps, leaving the strange, living cellar to its quiet, pulsating, and humming darkness. The tavern above awaits its first pour. With the daily libations prepared and arranged neatly behind the bar, the final step before opening can begin. Elian walks to the tavern's massive front door. This door is not a simple plank of wood. It is a fortress gate in miniature, crafted from thick, heavy oak and bound with wide, rusty straps of black iron. It is designed less to welcome guests and more to repel a small, determined army. There is no cheerful open sign to hang, no bell to ring. The signal that the gulping maw is ready for business is a sound as reliable as the rising of the moon. Elian grips the main crossbar, a huge, heavy beam of timber that slots into 2 iron brackets on either side of the doorframe. He plants his feet, takes a deep breath, and with a low, practiced grunt, he lifts. The beam is immensely heavy, and as it grinds against its iron supports, it produces a deep, groaning, agonizingly slow creak. It is the sound of an ancient tree being forced to bend against its will, the sound of stone scraping against rusty metal. The sound travels. It echoes out into the misty swamp air, a low, mournful call that announces the tavern's awakening. It is a sound of immense effort, a fitting auditory signature for an establishment that caters to those whose entire existence is often a struggle. With the bar finally released, Elian pushes the heavy door open just enough for a single patron to enter. And he waits. He does not have to wait long. For as long as he has been the keeper of the gulping maw, the first customer of the day has always been the same. Through the doorway, a large, hulking silhouette appears, momentarily blocking out the pale gray light of the morning. The figure moves with a slow, ponderous, earth-shaking tread. Each footstep is a heavy, solid thump on the flagstone floor, a sound that seems to vibrate up through the very foundations of the building. The patron is Old Man Grok. Old man is a term of affection, not a literal description, for Grok is not a man at all. He is a golem, a creature of living stone, animated by some long-forgotten magical art. He is immense, standing a full head and shoulders taller than any human, his body a rough, assembled collection of granite boulders and weathered rock. His face, if one could call it that, is a single, large, flat stone, its surface covered in a soft, green carpet of ancient moss. There are no eyes, no nose, no mouth. There is only the silent, stoic, and utterly unreadable visage of the stone itself. He does not speak. He does not nod or offer any form of greeting. He simply lumbers in, his great stony form navigating the familiar layout of the tavern with a slow, practiced ease. He approaches the bar, and with a gentle, deliberate movement that belies his immense size, he hoists himself onto one of the reinforced stools at the end of the bar. It is his stool. No one else ever dares to sit there. After settling in, a process that involves a few slow, grinding shifts of his stone limbs, Grok performs the first part of their daily ritual. He raises one of his massive rock-hewn hands and slowly, carefully, places a single object on the dark, polished surface of the petrified wood bar. It is a stone. But it is not just any stone. It is a perfectly smooth, perfectly round, perfectly gray river stone, worn down by centuries of tumbling in a fast-flowing current. It is a small, flawless piece of natural art. This is his payment. This is their currency. Elian looks at the stone, then at the blank, mossy face of the golem. He nods, a small, quiet acknowledgement of the transaction. He picks up the river stone. It is cool and heavy in his palm, a small piece of the outside world, of a place with flowing water and open skies. He takes his clean, damp cloth and begins to polish the stone, his movements gentle and reverent. He buffs its surface until it shines with a soft, dull luster in the dim tavern light. Then he reaches under the bar and places the newly polished stone into a large wooden box that is already filled with hundreds of other, identical, perfectly smooth river stones. It is Grok's running tab, a silent, beautiful account of years of patronage. With the payment accepted and processed, it is time for Elian to fulfill his end of the bargain. He takes a specific mug from a hook behind the bar. It is a heavy ceramic mug, thick and sturdy, with a chip in the rim that has been there for as long as Elian can remember. It is Grok's mug. He fills it not with ale or mead, but with cool, clean water from a special covered pail he keeps for this purpose. Then he performs the final, crucial step. He reaches for a small stone jar on a high shelf. The jar is filled with a fine, gray, shimmering dust. It is pulverized mineral, a special blend of ground-up quartz, feldspar, and mica. He takes a tiny, precise pinch of this mineral dust and sprinkles it into the mug of water. The dust hangs suspended in the water for a moment, catching the light and creating a miniature swirling galaxy before slowly dissolving. This is Grok's drink. It is a stone soup in the most literal sense, a beverage that provides the specific earthy nutrients a creature of living rock requires. He places the mug on the bar in front of the golem. Grok does not reach for it immediately. He simply sits there, his mossy face fixed in its usual inscrutable expression. Then, slowly, his great stone hand comes up and wraps around the ceramic mug. His movements are so careful, so deliberate, that the mug does not make a sound as he lifts it. He does not drink in the way a human would. He simply holds the mug, and the water level within it begins to slowly, almost imperceptibly, lower. He is absorbing the water, drawing its mineral-rich essence directly into his stony form.
The process is silent, and it takes a very long time. And in this silence, a deep and comfortable quiet settles between the two of them. This is their friendship. It is a relationship built not on words or shared jokes, but on years of this exact, unchanging, predictable routine. Elian knows that Grok will be the first to arrive and the last to leave. He knows that Grok prefers river stones that are more oval than perfectly round. He knows that Grok likes his water cool but not cold. Grok, in his own silent way, knows that Elian will always have his mineral dust, that he will always polish his payment stone with care, and that he will never try to fill the comfortable silence with pointless chatter.
Theirs is a bond forged in the quiet spaces between actions. It is a friendship as solid, as patient, and as enduring as the stone from which the golem is made. While Grok slowly absorbs his morning nourishment, Elian goes about his other quiet tasks, preparing for the day's more complicated clientele. But he is always aware of the golem's presence at the end of the bar. It is a comforting, grounding presence, a silent, unmoving guardian watching over the tavern's awakening. In a life filled with chaos, unpredictability, and strange, sometimes dangerous magic, the simple, unchanging ritual of Old Man Grok and his mug of dusty water is an anchor, a small, perfect piece of order in a world of entropy. And for that, the bartender is profoundly grateful. While Old Man Grok continues his slow, silent communion with his mineral water, the next customer of the day makes its arrival known. There is no sound of footsteps, no creak of the door. The first sound is a sound both unique and deeply familiar to Elian. It is a gentle, wet, rhythmic squelch slorp, squelch slorp. It is the sound of something large, amorphous, and very, very damp sliding its way across the flagstone floor. Elian doesn't even need to look up from the mug he is polishing to know who has arrived. It is Jiggles. Jiggles is not the creature's real name, of course. It is doubtful the creature even has a name in any recognizable sense. It is the nickname Elian has given to the tavern's resident gelatinous cube. The cube glides into the main room, a perfect 6-foot by 6-foot block of translucent, quivering jelly. It is not a frightening sight, at least not to Elian. It isn't malicious or aggressive. It is, for the most part, a gentle and curious being. It is simply messy, extremely messy. As it moves, it leaves behind a shimmering, viscous trail of slime, a snail trail of epic proportions that smells faintly of vinegar and dissolved limestone. Suspended within its clear, gelatinous body are the ghostly, half-dissolved remnants of its recent meals, the clean-picked bones of a cave rat, a rusty-looking dagger, and a single, surprisingly intact leather boot. These objects drift lazily within its form, like macabre exhibits in a strange, mobile museum. The cube communicates not with sound, but with light. Deep within its core, a soft, ethereal glow pulses with a gentle, rhythmic beat. The colors shift and change, a silent, beautiful language that Elian has learned to interpret over the years. A soft blue pulse is a sign of contentment. A pale yellow flicker indicates curiosity. and a slow, deep violet throb means it is thirsty. This morning, the cube is pulsing with a steady, expectant violet. It squelches to a halt in an open area near the center of the room. It has long since learned that getting too close to the wooden bar is a bad idea, and waits. Now comes the central challenge of this particular patron. How do you serve a drink to a creature that is, for all intents and purposes, a drink itself? You cannot simply hand it a mug. This is a problem that plagued Elian for months when the cube first became a regular, a logistical and chemical conundrum that required a great deal of trial, error, and ruined glassware. But, as with all things, he eventually developed a system. From a low shelf behind the bar, Elian retrieves the necessary equipment. First is the bowl. It is a wide, shallow, heavy bowl made of a special porous red clay. It has been alchemically treated, fired in a kiln with dragon's breath, and quenched in basilisk blood, or so the goblin artisan who sold it to him claimed. Whatever the process, the result is a vessel that is completely inert, capable of resisting the cube's highly acidic and digestive properties. Any other material, wood, metal, even standard ceramic, would be slowly but surely dissolved. Next, he takes a jug of a particular beverage reserved exclusively for jiggles. It is a sweet, thick, fermented fungal brew, the color of molasses and smelling strongly of overripe fruit. It is the only thing the cube seems to enjoy. He pours a generous amount of the thick, dark liquid into the special clay bowl. Now comes the delivery. He carefully carries the heavy bowl, holding it out in front of him, and walks towards the patiently pulsating cube. He gently places the bowl on the flagstone floor, a few feet in front of his gelatinous customer. The cube, its internal light now pulsing with a happy bright yellow, glides forward. The process of drinking is a fascinating, if slightly unsettling thing to watch. The cube does not lower a mouth to the bowl. Instead, it slowly, deliberately begins to envelop it. A part of its gelatinous form oozes forward, flowing up and over the sides of the clay bowl like a slow-motion, transparent wave. For a moment, the bowl and its dark contents are completely submerged within the cube's body. The dark liquid can be seen swirling and mixing with the cube's own translucent jelly, a temporary storm cloud within a clear sky. Then, just as slowly, the cube retracts, leaving the clay bowl behind on the floor, licked clean and gleaming. Not a single drop of the fungal brew remaining. The cube's internal light now shifts to a soft, contented, rhythmic pulse of blue. It has been served. And now the final part of this particular customer interaction begins, the aftermath. Jiggles, now sated and happy, begins to slowly squelch its way out of the tavern, leaving its shimmering, acidic slime trail in its wake. Elian watches it go with a quiet sigh. His job is not over. He returns to the bar and retrieves his other set of specialized equipment. A large wooden bucket filled with fine, dry sand, and a wide, flat-headed shovel. This is not a dramatic or heroic task. It is a mundane, practical, and absolutely necessary piece of janitorial work. He starts at the entrance, at the beginning of the slime trail, and begins the cleanup. He takes a scoop of sand and sprinkles it liberally over the wet, glistening slime. The sand immediately soaks up the moisture, turning the slick, hazardous goo into a clumpy, manageable sludge.
Then, with his wide shovel, he carefully scrapes the sand and slime mixture off the flagstone floor. Scrape, scoop, deposit into an empty bucket. He works his way along the cube's entire path, a slow, methodical process. It is the fantasy world equivalent of mopping up a very large acid spill. He is not angry or annoyed. This is simply part of the job description, one of the many small, unglamorous tasks that are the price of admission for running a tavern that caters to the strange and the monstrous. He has learned that you cannot have the quiet companionship of a golem without the occasional rock dust. You cannot have the beautiful song of a siren without the salty tears. And you cannot have the silent, colorful light show of a gelatinous cube without the inevitable slime trail. Each patron comes with their own unique set of challenges and cleanup requirements. It is a job that is equal parts bartending, alchemy, diplomacy, and janitorial service. As he scrapes up the last of the gooey mess, he feels a strange sense of satisfaction. He has successfully navigated another potentially difficult customer interaction. He has provided a service, maintained the peace, and restored his tavern to a state of relative cleanliness. He has solved the conundrum of the slime trail, not with magic or with force, but with a bucket of sand, a shovel, and a great deal of patience. And in the quiet, strange, and often messy world of the gulping maw, patience is the most valuable tool a bartender can possess. Just as Elian finishes sweeping the last of the sand and slime mixture into his bucket, the relative quiet of the mid-morning is shattered. The front door, still propped open, is suddenly filled with a flurry of frantic, chaotic motion. A small flock of harpies, perhaps 5 or 6 of them, descend upon the tavern. They do not walk in, they flutter, a half-flying, half-hopping entrance that kicks up clouds of dust from the flagstone floor and sends a few loose feathers drifting through the air. The arrival of the harpies marks the beginning of what Elian privately calls the mid-morning rush. It is not a rush in terms of numbers, but in terms of noise and social energy. Harpies are, by their very nature, creatures of high drama and relentless gossip. Their conversation is not a gentle murmur, it is a cacophony, a discordant symphony of sharp, bird-like squawks, high-pitched chirps, and harsh, sibilant whispers. They settle themselves at a large round table, their movements jerky and agitated, their sharp talons clicking and scraping against the wooden chairs. The air immediately becomes thick with their grievances. One is complaining about the quality of the carrion in the nearby swamp. Another is engaged in a detailed and vicious critique of a rival harpy's nesting technique. A third is recounting with great theatricality a minor territorial dispute she had with a grumpy badger. They speak over each other, their voices rising and falling in waves of indignation, a whirlwind of feathery fury. Elian watches them for a moment, his expression a carefully constructed mask of polite neutrality. He knows what they want. It's always the same. He takes down 5 small, chipped earthenware cups and fills them from a large jug of dark, purplish liquid. This is the fermented berry wine, a cheap, sweet, and highly alcoholic beverage that is the harpy's drink of choice. He carries the cups over to their table on a wooden tray, placing each one down with a steady hand. The harpies immediately fall upon the wine, their long, scaly fingers wrapping around the cups, their sharp, beaked faces dipping down to take noisy, slurping sips. For a brief, blissful moment, the cacophony is replaced by the sound of enthusiastic drinking. But the peace, as always, is short-lived. One of the harpies, a particularly scrawny and ill-tempered one named Scree, takes a sip, and her face contorts into a mask of profound disgust. She slams her cup back down on the table, sloshing a bit of the dark wine onto the wood. "Pah!" she squawks, her voice a piercing shriek that cuts through the tavern's ambiance. "Elian, this wine has turned. It's sour." The other harpies immediately stop their own conversations and turn to look at Scree, their beady eyes wide with a mixture of concern and a delicious vulture-like anticipation of a confrontation. The accused wine sits in her cup, looking exactly like the wine in all the other cups. Elian, who has already returned to his post behind the bar, hears the complaint and turns to face them. He does not sigh. He does not roll his eyes, though he desperately wants to. He simply meets Scree's furious gaze with a look of calm, patient inquiry. He knows with an absolute certainty born of long experience that there is nothing wrong with the wine. He tasted it himself this morning when he brought the jug up from the cellar. It is a fresh batch, sweet and fruity, exactly as it should be. The problem is not the wine. The problem is Scree. He knows that she lost a particularly shiny bottle cap to another harpy in a game of chance last night, and she has been in a foul, argumentative mood ever since. The sour wine is not a matter of taste. It is a matter of principle. It is a manifestation of her general dissatisfaction with the world. Elian could argue. He could insist that the wine is fine, that she is mistaken. This would be the truth. But he knows that presenting a harpy with the truth, especially when she is in a contrary mood, is like trying to put out a fire with oil. It would only escalate the situation. She would shriek, her sisters would join in, and soon he would have a full-blown harpy riot on his hands. And so he chooses a different path. The path of quiet, subtle diplomacy. He walks calmly from behind the bar and approaches their table. He does not look at the other harpies. He gives Scree his full, undivided attention. "Is there a problem with the vintage, madam?" he asks, his voice low and even, a soothing balm on the hot, angry air. "A problem?" Scree screeches. "It tastes like swamp muck and fermented sorrow. It's undrinkable." Elian nods slowly, his expression one of deep, thoughtful concern. "I see," he says. "Allow me to rectify the situation." He picks up her cup. He does not sniff it or taste it. He simply accepts her reality. He takes the cup back to the bar. The entire tavern is now watching this small, quiet drama unfold. Old Man Grok has paused in his absorption of water. A few of the imps in the rafters have stopped their chittering to peer down. Elian turns his back to the room for a moment. He reaches under the counter and retrieves a tiny, unmarked vial filled with a thick, golden, viscous liquid. It is honey nectar, harvested from the giant carnivorous flowers that grow in the high, inaccessible cliffs. It is incredibly sweet and potent. He uncorks the vial and allows a single tiny golden drop to fall into Scree's cup. He gives the cup a gentle swirl, the drop dissolving instantly into the dark wine. Then he turns back around and walks to the harpy's table, his face still a mask of serene professionalism. He places the cup back in front of Scree. "My sincerest apologies," he says. "I believe this batch was from the shady side of the berry patch. This should be more to your liking." He has not admitted fault. He has not challenged her. He has simply solved the problem. Spree eyes him suspiciously for a moment. Then she picks up the cup and takes a small tentative sip. Her beady eyes wide, a look of profound, almost beatific satisfaction spreads across her sharp, bird-like features. "Ah," she chirps, her voice suddenly soft and melodic. "Yes, much better. Perfect, in fact." The crisis is averted. The other harpies, their brief moment of entertainment over, immediately return to their own gossiping and complaining, the volume in the tavern quickly rising back to its previous chaotic level. Scree, now perfectly content with her corrected wine, begins to happily recount a story about a particularly foolish squirrel she once outsmarted. Elian gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod and retreats to the safety of his bar. He has once again navigated the treacherous waters of his clientele's fragile egos. He has learned that, as a bartender in a monster tavern, his job is often less about serving what is in the cup and more about serving what the customer needs to believe is in the cup. It is a quiet art, a delicate dance of de-escalation and diplomacy, fought not with swords, but with a well-timed drop of honey and an unwavering expression of calm. And as the cacophony of the harpies washes over him, he finds a strange sense of peace in the knowledge that he has, for now, preserved the delicate, noisy, and perpetually complaining harmony of the gulping maw.
As the midday sun reaches its highest point, casting the brightest and sharpest of the pale beams through the tavern's grimy windows, a new presence makes itself known. The chattering cacophony of the harpies momentarily falters, and even old man Grok seems to pause in his slow, stony absorption. A large, dark shadow falls across the doorway, and a figure stoops low to enter, a necessity for a creature of his immense stature. It is the Minotaur. He is a giant, a creature of myth and legend, a being forged for mazes and mayhem. But the Minotaur who enters the gulping maw is not the raging beast of heroic tales. This is an old warrior, a veteran of countless forgotten battles, and he wears his history on his very body. He is massive, his shoulders as wide as the tavern door itself, his great shaggy head crowned with a pair of thick, powerful horns. But one of the horns is broken, its tip sheared off in some long-ago conflict. The other is scarred with deep white lines, a testament to its use as both a weapon and a shield. His thick, dark fur is matted and coarse, and it is streaked with broad patches of gray, especially around his heavy, bull-like muzzle. He moves not with aggression, but with a deep, weary gentleness. He navigates the cramped, chaotic space of the tavern with a slow, careful deliberation, his huge cloven hooves stepping softly on the flagstone floor. He seems to be actively trying to make himself smaller, to take up less space, to be less of a presence. He hunches his great shoulders, pulls his arms in close, and ducks his head, as if apologizing for his own immense size. He is a mountain trying to pass itself off as a hill. He does not look at the other patrons. His gaze is fixed on the floor in front of him. The harpies fall silent as he passes, watching him with a mixture of fear and respect. Even they, in all their noisy self-importance, know not to bother the Minotaur. He makes his way to his usual spot, a large, heavily reinforced table in the darkest, most secluded corner of the tavern. The table is scarred and pitted, but it is solid, built to withstand a considerable weight. He settles onto the massive, tree stump-like stool, a piece of furniture built specifically for him, and the entire tavern seems to breathe a collective sigh as he comes to rest. Elian watches him from behind the bar. He does not wait for an order. The Minotaur has been coming here for years, and his drink is always the same. Elian turns and retrieves a very specific vessel from a shelf reserved for special customers. It is the Minotaur's mug. It is a thing of beauty in its own rugged, functional way. It is a massive, barrel-like mug, carved from a single solid piece of dark, heavy oak. It is large enough to hold a full gallon of liquid, and it is fitted with two huge, thick handles spaced wide apart. It is a mug designed not for a man, but for a beast. A vessel that can be held securely in a pair of massive, powerful, non-human hands. Elian places the great mug under the tap of a particular barrel, one that contains a dark, heavy, almost black stout, as thick as motor oil and with a rich, bitter, earthy flavor. The stout is strong, but not in a way that leads to boisterous drunkenness. It is a slow, contemplative, melancholy drink, a beverage for long, quiet afternoons. He fills the massive mug to the brim, the dark liquid forming a thick, creamy brown head. The weight of the full mug is considerable. Elian has to use both hands to lift it from the counter. He carries it over to the corner table, his steps quiet and respectful. He places the mug on the table in front of the Minotaur with a soft, solid thud. He does not speak. The Minotaur does not speak. He simply raises his great shaggy head and looks at Elian for a brief moment. His eyes are not the wild, bloodshot orbs of a raging monster. They are deep, dark, and ancient, filled with a profound and weary sadness, the eyes of a creature who has seen too much and lost too much. He gives a slow, almost imperceptible nod of thanks. Elian nods back and retreats to his bar, leaving the gentle giant to his solitude. The Minotaur wraps his huge, calloused hands around the two handles of his custom-made mug. He lifts the heavy vessel to his lips and takes a long, slow drink. He is not drinking for thirst or for intoxication. He is drinking for comfort, for the familiar, bitter taste that seems to soothe some deep, old wound within him. After the drink, he does not put the mug down. He simply cradles it in his hands, his great horned head bowed, his gaze fixed on the dark, swirling liquid within. The tavern slowly comes back to life around him, The harpies resume their chattering, though at a slightly more subdued volume. The imps begin their quiet games in the rafters. But the corner where the Minotaur sits remains an island of profound and absolute silence. He is a figure of immense power and potential, yet he radiates an aura of deep, unbreakable peace. Elian understands this peace. He knows that the Minotaur does not come to the Gulping Maw for conversation or for company in the traditional sense. He comes for the quiet. He comes for the anonymity. He comes for a place where he can simply be, without having to perform the role of the monster. Here, he is not the beast of the labyrinth, the terror of legend. He is just an old warrior, tired of fighting, who wants to sit in a dark corner and drink his stout in silence. Elian leaves him be, occasionally glancing over to see if his mug needs refilling. For the rest of the afternoon, the Minotaur sits, cradling his drink, lost in his own vast, silent world. He is a living monument to a forgotten age, a creature of epic tragedy reduced to a quiet, lonely regular in a backwater tavern. And Elian, the quiet, observant bartender, understands that even the most fearsome of creatures can carry the heaviest of burdens, and that sometimes the greatest kindness you can offer a monster is not a weapon or a challenge, but simply a sturdy table, a dark corner, and a shared, respectful silence. In most taverns across the land, the air is filled with music. A cheerful, often slightly out-of-tune bard will sit in a corner, strumming a lute and singing boisterous songs of heroic deeds, lost loves, and dragons slain. The patrons will clap along, sing the choruses, and toss a few coins into the bard's hat. It is a familiar, comforting, and quintessentially human sound. The Gulping Maw has no bard. A lute-strumming musician would not last 5 minutes in this establishment. The harpies would critique his pitch with vicious, piercing squawks. The Minotaur's silent melancholy would curdle the cheerful tunes. And the gelatinous cube would, in all likelihood, simply absorb the poor fellow, his final tragic ballad muffled by its quivering form. No, there are no bards allowed here. But that is not to say that the tavern is silent. It is filled with its own unique and strange music, a constant, organic symphony that is as complex and as layered as any orchestral piece. Elian, the bartender, is the conductor of this strange orchestra, and its only true audience. He stands behind his bar, his hands busy with the endless, mindless tasks of wiping, polishing, and rinsing, but his ears are always listening, attuned to the subtle, shifting melodies of the maw. The bass section of this symphony is provided by the tavern itself. From the cellar below, there is the constant, low, subsonic hum of the barrel containing the nectar of the void. It is a deep, resonant thrum, a sound that is felt more than heard, a primal, foundational note that underpins everything. It is a sound of immense, ancient power, held in quiet, dormant check. Layered on top of this is the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the hellhound that has now taken up its customary position by the great stone fireplace. The beast is massive, its fur the color of cooling embers, and as it sleeps, its great chest rises and falls with a slow, deep, resonant rhythm. Each exhalation is a soft, rumbling sound, like distant rolling thunder. And occasionally, a faint blue wisp of smoke will curl from its nostrils. It is a sound of immense, controlled power, a sleeping volcano that provides a steady, comforting beat to the room. The percussion section is more varied and chaotic. There is the gentle, wet squelch slorp of Jiggles the gelatinous cube as it occasionally shifts its position in the center of the room. There is the sharp, impatient click-clack of the harpies' talons on the wooden table and floor. And there is the quiet, grinding sound of Old Man Grok as he slowly rotates his stone head, a sound like two great boulders rubbing together. Each sound is a beat, a rhythm, a small percussive contribution to the overall soundscape. The string and woodwind sections are provided by the tavern's more vocal, but not necessarily verbal patrons. The harpies' conversation, which has now settled into a lower, more conspiratorial register, is a constant stream of high-pitched chirps, sibilant whispers, and the occasional, sharp, interrogative squawk. It is a restless, agitated melody, a line of anxious energy that weaves its way through the room. And high above, in the dark, smoky rafters, there is the ever-present chittering of the nest of imps. They are tiny, winged creatures, no bigger than a man's hand, and they communicate in a language of rapid-fire, high-frequency clicks and whistles. Their sound is like 1,000 tiny, unseen insects, a constant, shimmering, textural layer that fills the high, empty spaces of the cavernous room. Ilian is the master of this symphony. He is not just hearing noise, he is listening to information. Over the years, his ear has become exquisitely trained to this strange music. He can read the mood of the room, predict future events, and de-escalate potential conflicts, all by simply listening. He knows, for instance, that the steady, even-paced chittering of the imps is a sign of contentment. They are grooming each other, playing small, harmless games, and generally keeping to themselves. But if the pitch of their chittering begins to rise, if the tempo becomes more frantic and aggressive, he knows that a territorial dispute is about to break out. A moment later, a small, unfortunate imp might be unceremoniously shoved from the rafters, and Ilian will have to be ready to catch it before it lands in a customer's drink. He can read the hellhound's breathing. The deep, even rhythm is the sound of a peaceful slumber. But if the breathing becomes shallow, if it is punctuated by a low, guttural growl, he knows the beast is having a bad dream, perhaps reliving some ancient battle from its infernal past. He knows to be prepared for a sudden waking, for the beast to startle to its feet, its eyes glowing with a faint, hellish light. A quiet, soothing word and a saucer of cool water are usually enough to calm it back down. He can even interpret the subtle shifts in the low hum of the nectar of the void. A steady hum is normal, but if the hum begins to fluctuate, to pulse with a strange, discordant energy, he knows that a powerful magical being has entered the tavern, and its aura is interacting with the strange substance in the barrel.
It is a silent, early warning system, a magical tripwire that alerts him to the presence of beings like the Mind Flayer. This is the music of the Maw. It is a living, breathing, constantly evolving piece of ambient art. It is a symphony of brimstone and wet fur, of grinding stone and chittering imps, of sleeping beasts and humming voids. It is the auditorial soul of the tavern, a complex and beautiful tapestry of sound that tells the story of its strange and wonderful inhabitants. And Ilian, the quiet, unassuming bartender, he does not need a lute or a flute. He has his orchestra. And as he polishes a glass, his head cocked slightly to the side, he listens to his strange, monstrous music, and he finds in it a deep, abiding, and profoundly peaceful sense of home.
Just as the ear attunes itself to the strange music of the gulping maw, the nose must learn to navigate its equally complex and potent olfactory landscape. To a first-time visitor, should one ever be foolish enough to wander in, the smell would be overwhelming, a physical assault on the senses. It is a thick, heavy, almost tangible aroma, a rich, multi-layered perfume that clings to the air, the furniture, and your very clothes. But for Elian, this is not just a smell. It is a language, a form of communication, a detailed and constantly updated report on the state of his domain. He can stand behind his bar, close his eyes, and read the room with his nose as accurately as another man might read a book. Let us, for a moment, try to dissect this complex bouquet, to break it down into its constituent notes, just as Elian does every day. The base note, the foundation upon which all other scents are built, is the smell of the place itself. It is the deep, ancient, and pervasive scent of damp rock. It is a cool, clean, mineral smell, the smell of a world that has never known the sun. It speaks of permanence, of time measured in geological ages. Mingled with this is the ever-present aroma of fermentation. It is the sour, earthy tang of the bog-water ale, the sweet, honeyed scent of the glimmer-wisp mead, and the sharp, vinegary notes of various other strange and experimental brews bubbling away in the cellar. It is the smell of life being transformed, of sugars being consumed, and spirits being born. It is the smell of the tavern's primary function. Layered on top of this foundation are the scents of the clientele, a transient and ever-shifting collection of personal aromas. The most prominent of these, especially when the imp's inactive, is the faint but unmistakable smell of brimstone. It is a sharp, sulfuric, almost metallic scent, like a struck matchstick or a recent lightning strike. It is not an unpleasant smell, just a very distinct one. It is the natural musk of creatures born of fire and mischief. And when it grows stronger, Elian knows the imps are either getting agitated or are attempting some minor, ill-advised pyrotechnic feat in the rafters. Then there is the rich animal musk of wet fur. This scent has many contributors. It is the deep, bovine, almost grassy smell of the old minotaur, a scent that speaks of ancient forests and long, lonely journeys. It is the sharper, more canine, hyena-like scent of a visiting gnoll, a smell of carrion and wild, untamed places. And sometimes it is the damp, swampy, dog-like smell of the hellhound, a scent that is paradoxically
both wet and hot at the same time. This collection of feral perfumes is a constant reminder that this is not a place for civilized men, but a watering hole for the beasts of the world. Occasionally, a new, stranger scent will join the chorus. When a will-o'-the-wisp drifts in, it brings with it a sharp, clean, electric scent of ozone, the smell of the air after a thunderstorm. It is a smell that seems to momentarily cleanse the palate, a brief, refreshing interlude in the otherwise heavy atmosphere. When a gelatinous cube has recently passed through, it leaves behind the faint, vinegary, acidic tang of its slime trail, a sour note that cuts through the other earthier smells. And on the rare occasion that a ghostly or spectral patron manifests, it brings with it a cold, dry, dusty scent, the smell of a forgotten tomb or a long abandoned attic. This is the olfactory landscape of the Gulping Maw, a symphony of smells that is as complex and as informative as its music. For a stranger, it would be a chaotic and unpleasant assault. It is the smell of monsters, of dirt, of decay. It is the smell of everything that the clean, orderly human world seeks to scrub away and forget. But for Elian, this is no longer the case. He has lived with these smells for so long that they have become a part of him. He no longer registers them as good or bad. They are simply information. The sudden spike in the scent of brimstone tells him to keep an eye on the rafters. The arrival of the ozone scent tells him to prepare a small saucer of pure alcohol, the only thing a will-o'-the-wisp consumes. The thick, heavy musk of the minotaur tells him that his quietest and most reliable regular has arrived. The smell is his co-worker, his silent assistant, constantly feeding him data about the state of the room. But it is more than just information. Over the long, slow years, something strange has happened. This overwhelming and often unpleasant combination of smells has transformed. It has ceased to be an assault and has become a comfort. It has become the smell of his workplace. It has become the smell of his life. It has, in the strangest and most profound way, become the smell of home. The scent of damp rock is the scent of his foundation, the stability of his world. The scent of fermentation is the scent of his craft, his purpose. The scent of brimstone and wet fur and ozone is the scent of his community, his strange, dysfunctional, monstrous family. It is the smell of a place where he belongs, a place where his unique skills are valued, a place where he is needed. When he leaves the tavern for his brief errands in the nearby swamp village, the clean air feels thin, empty, and sterile to him. He finds himself missing the rich, complex, challenging aroma of his tavern. He misses the authenticity of it. The Gulping Maw smells exactly like what it is, a place for monsters. It is honest, and in a world full of perfumed lies and sanitized facades, that honesty is a rare and beautiful thing. And so, as he stands behind his bar, wiping down a mug and breathing in the thick, complicated air, Elian feels a sense of deep, quiet contentment. He breathes in the faint sulfuric tang from above, the rich animal musk from the corner, and the sweet, earthy rot from the cellar below. He is home, and it smells wonderful. As the evening begins to draw in, and the pale gray light outside the tavern windows deepens into a soft purple dusk, a new patron arrives.
This one does not announce its presence with a sound or a smell. It simply appears. A tall, slender figure, completely enveloped in a heavy, dark, hooded cloak, glides silently through the doorway. The other patrons, even the boisterous harpies, seem to instinctively quiet down, a subtle, collective hush falling over the room. The figure moves with an unnerving, fluid grace, seeming to float rather than walk across the flagstone floor. It takes a seat at the farthest, most shadowy end of the bar, its face completely obscured by the deep cowl of its hood. Elian feels a familiar, faint, prickling sensation at the back of his neck. He does not need to see the face beneath the hood. He knows who this is. It is the Mind Flayer. The creature does not speak. It does not raise a hand to gesture for service. There is no need. As Elian turns to face his new customer, the order simply appears in his mind, fully formed and unnervingly clear. It is not a voice. It is a pure, distilled concept, a piece of information seamlessly inserted into his own thoughts. A glass of the chilled, spicy blood wine, and do not bruise the vintage. Elian gives a slow, subtle nod of acknowledgement. He has long since grown accustomed to this silent, psychic form of ordering. He turns to a special refrigerated cask he keeps for his more discerning clientele. He takes down a delicate crystal goblet. The Mind Flayer abhors the crude earthenware mugs used by the others, and fills it with the dark crimson liquid. The blood wine is thick and aromatic, spiced with exotic herbs from a distant, sunless land. He places the goblet on the bar in front of the cloaked figure. A slender, gray, three-fingered hand emerges from the sleeve of the cloak, its movements precise and graceful, and wraps around the stem of the goblet. The hand and the goblet retreats back into the shadows of the hood. With most customers, the transaction would now be complete, but not with the Mind Flayer. For the Mind Flayer, the drink is merely an accessory, a prop in its favorite pastime, the game. The game is a subtle, silent affair, a test of wills played on a psychic battlefield. The Mind Flayer does not seek to cause chaos or harm. It is far too sophisticated for such crude entertainment. It seeks to subtly manipulate, to gently nudge the consciousness of the lesser beings around it, simply to see if it can. It is an exercise in its own power, a form of intellectual solitaire. The game begins. Elian, while appearing to be casually wiping down a section of the bar, keeps his senses finely tuned to the rhythms of the room. The first move is a simple one. One of the harpies, Scree, who has been happily sipping her honey-sweetened berry wine, suddenly stops mid-squawk. A look of confusion crosses her face. She looks down at her cup, as if seeing it for the first time. Actually, a new thought seems to occur to her. I think I'd much rather have the bog-water ale. She starts to raise her wing to call for Elian, a completely uncharacteristic and illogical change of taste. Elian notices. Before Scree can even open her beak, he catches her eye and gives a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. He then subtly gestures towards the cloaked figure at the end of the bar. Scree follows his gaze, and a flicker of understanding and a great deal of fear dawns in her beady eyes. She quickly looks back down at her berry wine and takes a large, noisy gulp, as if to prove that this was what she wanted all along. The Mind Flayer has lost the first point. The next move is even more subtle. At the other end of the bar, Old Man Grok, who has been sitting as still as a mountain for hours, suddenly shifts his weight on his stool. It is a slow, grinding movement accompanied by the sound of rock scraping against wood. It is a tiny, almost insignificant action, but it is deeply out of character. Grok does not fidget. Elian feels the psychic push that caused this movement, a gentle mental suggestion planted in the golem's simple elemental consciousness. You are uncomfortable. Adjust yourself. It is a meaningless act of manipulation, a psychic prank. And now Elian knows the game is turning towards him. The Mind Flayer, having found the other patrons too easy or too cowardly, will now focus its attention on the bartender. Elian has played this game many times before, and he knows he cannot win with strength. To try and build a psychic wall, to actively resist the Mind Flayer's intrusion, is like trying to build a dam against the ocean with your bare hands. The creature's mental power is vast, ancient, and overwhelming. To fight it is to invite it in, to give it a structure to dismantle. So, Elian does not fight. He yields. He embraces the single greatest defense a simple mortal has against a being of immense cosmic intelligence. Utter, soul-crushing, mind-numbing boredom. He picks up a single unremarkable earthenware mug. He picks up his damp, clean cloth, and he begins to polish the mug. He does not polish it to make it clean. It is already clean. He polishes it as a meditative act. His entire consciousness, his entire focus is poured into this one simple, repetitive task. He focuses on the feel of the damp cloth on the cool ceramic. He focuses on the circular motion of his hand over and over and over. He focuses on the faint squeak the cloth makes. He thinks about the mug. He thinks about its history, the clay from which it was made, the fire in which it was forged. He thinks about the thousands of times it has been filled and emptied. His mind becomes a mental wall, not of psychic force, but of sheer, impenetrable, mundane routine. The Mind Flayer's telepathic probes arrive, seeking a purchase in his mind. It tries to plant a suggestion. You have forgotten to add the honey nectar to the harpies' wine. Elian's mind, focused entirely on the mug, simply registers this as an irrelevant piece of data and discards it. His hand continues its circular polishing motion. The Mind Flayer tries again with a more subtle emotional manipulation. You feel a sudden, deep wave of sadness for the lonely Minotaur. Elian's consciousness, consumed by the simple tactile reality of the mug, acknowledges the feeling and then lets it go, like a leaf floating down a stream. The circular motion continues. The squeak of the cloth on the ceramic is the only thought in his head. The game goes on for several long, silent minutes. It is a battle of cosmic, intellectual superiority against the unassailable fortress of the mundane. And the mundane is winning. The mind flare, a being that can traverse dimensions and shatter the sanity of powerful wizards, finds itself utterly unable to penetrate the simple, profound emptiness of a man polishing a cup. It finds no cracks, no interesting emotions, no complex thoughts to unravel. There is only the cloth, the circle, the squeak. It is like trying to have a battle of wits with a rock. Finally, the mind flayer gives up. A final, faint psychic pulse emanates from the cloaked figure, a feeling not of defeat, but of profound and utter boredom. The game is over. The cloaked figure silently lifts its crystal goblet, drains the contents in one smooth, graceful motion, and places the empty glass back on the bar. A slender gray hand emerges, leaving a single, intricately carved piece of obsidian on the counter as payment. And then, as silently as it arrived, the mind flare glides out of the tavern and vanishes into the night. Elian stops polishing the mug. He looks at it for a moment, as if seeing it for the first time. He puts it back on the shelf. He has won. He has defeated a being of immense psychic power, not with magic, not with willpower, but with the quiet, unassuming, and ultimately invincible power of a boring, repetitive task. It is a strange and silent victory, but in the quiet, deadly world of the gulping maw, it is the only kind that matters. As the night deepens and the patrons finish their drinks, the final ritual of their visit begins: the payment. In a typical tavern, this is a simple, straightforward transaction. A patron calls for the bill, a few gold, silver, or copper coins are exchanged, and the matter is settled. But the Gulping Maw is not a typical tavern, and its economy is as strange and as varied as its clientele. Gold is accepted here, of course. It is a useful, universal currency, and Elian keeps a small, heavy, leather-bound lockbox under the bar for the rare occasions when a human or a dwarf, lost or exceptionally brave, stumbles in. But gold is uncommon. Most of his patrons operate on a much older, more interesting, and far more personal system of currency. It is a system of barter, of favors, and of things that cannot be easily measured in precious metals. The economy of the Maw is a strange secret language, and Elian is its most fluent speaker. Consider the harpies. When they have finished their wine and their gossip, they do not produce a handful of coins. Instead, they flutter up to the bar, and with a great deal of preening and self-important squawking, they present their payment. Their currency is anything that is small, shiny, and stolen. Tonight, Scree proudly drops a single silver earring onto the bar, a delicate piece of craftsmanship that was clearly once prized by a wealthy merchant's wife. Another harpy offers up a collection of brightly colored glass beads. A third presents a small, polished brass button from a soldier's uniform. Elian accepts these offerings with a solemn nod. He knows they are stolen, but he does not judge. This is the nature of harpies. For them, theft is not a crime. It is an art form. And these small, glittering baubles are their masterpieces. He sweeps the trinkets into a wooden drawer, a chaotic magpie's nest of single earrings, shiny rocks, and other miscellaneous treasures. He will sort through them later, trading them with a traveling goblin merchant for supplies, or simply keeping the ones he finds beautiful. The Minotaur, when he finally drains his massive, gallon-sized mug of stout, pays in a much quieter and more personal way. He reaches into a small leather pouch at his belt and places his payment on the bar. It is not gold, nor is it stolen. It is a small, exquisitely carved wooden figure. Tonight, it is a bird, a tiny, perfect representation of a swamp sparrow, its feathers and wings carved with a detail that seems impossible for a creature with such large, clumsy-looking hands. The Minotaur is a surprisingly gifted whittler, and he spends his long, lonely hours on the road carving these small, beautiful figures from fallen branches. Each one is a small piece of his soul, a quiet expression of a beauty that he cannot put into words. Elian accepts the small wooden bird with a genuine reverence. He holds it in his palm for a moment, admiring the craftsmanship, before placing it carefully on a high shelf behind the bar, where it joins a growing collection of tiny carved animals: a wolf, a bear, a fish, a snake. This shelf is one of Elian's most prized possessions. It is a silent testament to the gentle, artistic soul that hides within the heart of the fearsome beast. Some forms of payment are even less tangible. The Mind Flayer, before it departed, left behind a single, intricately carved piece of obsidian. This is its physical payment, a beautiful and valuable object in its own right. But its true payment was delivered psychically. As Elian picked up the obsidian, a whisper was planted in his mind, a single useful piece of secret information. Tonight's whisper was a simple one. The Western Bridge has a loose support beam. It will not hold the weight of the tax collector's cart tomorrow. This is not a grand prophecy, but it is incredibly useful information. Elian will pass this knowledge on to a few of his regulars who might have business with the tax collector's cart. The whisper is a form of currency that buys loyalty and ensures the smooth, unofficial operation of the local underworld. It is a payment that is both priceless and weightless. Other creatures pay with pieces of themselves. On occasion, a shadow mastiff, a great dark hound made of living, tangible darkness, will visit the tavern. It does not drink, but it enjoys the warmth of the fire. As payment for the hospitality, it will often leave behind one of its own shed teeth. A shadow mastiff's tooth is a thing of strange power. It is a shard of solid physical night. When ground into a fine powder and thrown into the air, it can create a small, localized area of absolute, impenetrable darkness, a darkness that even magical light cannot pierce. This powder is highly sought after by thieves, assassins, and other creatures of the night, and Elian can trade a single tooth for a month's worth of supplies. A visiting gorgon, a creature with coiling metallic snakes for hair, might pay with a single shed scale from one of her serpentine locks. The scale is as hard as steel and incredibly light, a perfect material for crafting a sharp, durable, and easily concealable dagger point. A will-o'-the-wisp pays with a small, glowing mote of its own essence, a tiny spark of cold magical light that can be trapped in a jar and used as a lantern that never burns out. This is the strange, secret economy of the Gulping Maw. It is a system built on the unique skills, natures, and physiologies of its patrons. It is a barter system that trades in whispers and teeth, in stolen trinkets and handcrafted art, in shadows and in light. It is a beautiful, chaotic, and deeply personal form of commerce. It requires Elian to be not just a bartender, but also a pawnbroker, an appraiser, an information broker, and a dealer in rare and exotic magical components. He must know the market value of a harpy's stolen earring, the practical application of a gorgon's scale, and the strategic importance of a mind flayer's whispered secret. It is a far more complicated and demanding job than simply counting coins. But as Elian looks at his collection, the drawer of shiny baubles, the shelf of carved animals, the small, carefully labeled pouches of magical powders and components, he feels a deep sense of satisfaction. His wealth cannot be measured in gold. It is measured in stories, in secrets, in the strange, unique, and wonderful currencies of the monstrous world he serves. And in that, he is the richest man he knows.
The night wears on, and a comfortable, weary lull has settled over the Gulping Maw. The initial chaotic energy of the evening has subsided. The harpies, their gossip and grievances exhausted, are now engaged in a quiet, half-hearted game of staring at each other. The Minotaur continues his silent vigil in the corner, his great mug now empty, his head bowed in what might be sleep or simply deep thought. Even the imps in the rafters have quieted down, their chittering replaced by the soft, dry rustle of their leathery wings as they settle in for the night. The air is thick with the comfortable, familiar smells and sounds of the tavern at rest. It is in this moment of profound, shared quiet that a new sound emerges. It is not a loud sound. It is not a sudden sound. It is a single, soft, impossibly pure note that seems to be born out of the silence itself. It begins as a low, gentle hum, almost a vibration, and then it swells, rising in pitch and clarity until it fills the entire cavern. It is a sound of such heartbreaking, transcendent beauty that it seems to defy the very laws of acoustics. It is a sound that should not, could not,
exist in a place as rough, as grimy, and as cynical as this? The source of this divine music is a figure who has been sitting unnoticed at a small wobbly table near the back wall all evening. She is a siren. On land, away from her native sea, she is a pathetic and miserable-looking creature. She is wrapped in a heavy, damp, seaweed-smelling cloak. Her skin is pale and clammy, and her long, dark hair hangs in limp, salty tangles around her face. She has been quietly drinking mug after mug of a special brew Elian prepares for her. Pure, clean water saturated with a heavy dose of sea salt. It is the only thing that can quench her deep oceanic thirst. All evening, she has been a picture of quiet dejection, a creature tragically out of her element. But now, as she sings, she is transformed. Her head is tilted back, her eyes are closed, and from her throat pours a melody that is both a lament and a celebration. It is the sound of the deep ocean, of the lonely cry of a whale in the abyssal dark, of the gentle lapping of waves on a moonlit shore. It is a song of profound loss and boundless love, a melody that speaks of ancient drowned kingdoms and the light of distant stars reflected on a boundless sea. It is a sound that bypasses the ears and goes straight to the heart. And the entire tavern, this collection of rough, jaded, monstrous beings, is utterly captivated. The effect is instantaneous and absolute. The harpies, who have never appreciated any sound that did not come from their own beaks, fall completely silent. Their sharp, beaky faces are turned towards the siren, their beady eyes wide with a strange, unreadable emotion. The chittering of the imps in the rafters ceases, their mischievous energy stilled by the pure, unadulterated beauty of the song. Even Old Man Grok, the impassive, unmovable golem, seems to have tilted his great mossy stone head, as if listening with the very rock from which he is made. The Minotaur lifts his head from his empty mug, and in his deep, sad eyes, a single crystalline tear forms and traces a slow, clean path through his coarse gray fur. For a single, brief, magical moment, the rough, ugly, and cynical tavern is transformed. It becomes a cathedral. It becomes a sacred space, consecrated by the sheer, overwhelming beauty of the siren's song. The grime on the walls, the stains on the floor, the inherent ugliness of the place and its inhabitants, all of it seems to melt away, replaced by a feeling of profound shared grace. There is no magic in the song, not in the traditional sense. It is not a charm or an enchantment designed to lure sailors to their doom. This is something else entirely. This is art. Pure, simple, and heartbreakingly beautiful art, offered up freely in a place that has never known it. And then, as quickly and as quietly as it began, it stops. The final note hangs in the air for a moment, a shimmering, perfect echo, and then it fades back into the profound silence from which it was born. The spell is broken. The tavern is once again just a tavern. The harpies shake their heads as if waking from a dream,
and immediately begin whispering to each other about what just happened. The Minotaur lowers his head once more, a quiet, shuddering sigh escaping his great chest. The siren, her brief moment of transcendent beauty over, looks even more miserable than before. The act of singing, of sharing the deep oceanic soul within her, has clearly taken a great toll. She rises slowly from her chair, her movements stiff and weary. She walks to the bar, her damp cloak trailing on the floor. She does not offer a stolen bauble or a piece of carved wood. She simply looks at Elian, and her pale, sad eyes are swimming with unshed tears. A single, perfect tear escapes and rolls down her cheek, but it is not a tear of water. As it falls, it solidifies, catching the dim lantern light and glittering with an inner fire. It lands on the dark wood of the bar with a soft, delicate tink. It is a pearl, a single, flawless, iridescent pearl, still warm from the sadness that created it. This is her payment. Elian, his own eyes suspiciously moist, simply nods. He picks up the pearl, its surface as smooth and as cool as polished marble, and places it in a small velvet-lined box he keeps specifically for this purpose. It is a box that contains only a handful of other similar pearls, a treasure trove of captured moments. The siren gives him a final grateful look, pulls her damp, heavy cloak tightly around herself, and slips out of the tavern, leaving only the lingering echo of her song and the faint, salty smell of the sea. The tavern is quiet for a long time after she leaves. The usual cacophony does not immediately return. The patrons seem to be lost in their own thoughts, touched by the unexpected moment of grace they have just witnessed. Even in a place as dark and as grimy as the Gulping Maw, even in the hearts of the most monstrous of creatures, there is still a space for beauty. And Elian, as he carefully closes the lid on his small box of pearls, understands his job better than ever. He is not just a bartender. He is a keeper of a sanctuary, a guardian of a space where even a lonely, miserable siren can feel safe enough to sing her heartbreakingly beautiful song. And that, he thinks, is a job worth doing.
The profound, lingering quiet left in the wake of the siren song is eventually and inevitably broken. The laws of entropy and of goblinoids demand it. The harpies, having fully processed the beautiful moment and decided it was deeply suspicious, resume their bickering with renewed vigor. The imps, bored with artistry, begin dropping small, harmless, but annoying pebbles on the patrons below. The tavern is slowly but surely returning to its natural state of low-grade, chaotic normalcy. It is into this returning din that a new customer enters. This one is impossible to miss. He has to turn sideways and duck his great, lumpy head to even fit through the doorway. It is a troll. But this is not one of the ancient, cunning, bridge-dwelling trolls of legend. This is a young troll, barely more than an adolescent, and he possesses all the grace and coordination of a newborn giraffe on a frozen pond. He is immense, a great, lumpy, green-gray creature of muscle and bone. His long, gangly arms ending in thick, powerful hands. He looks around the tavern with wide, slightly panicked eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the enclosed space and the number of other beings. He is a creature of the wide open fens and murky swamps, and the confines of the tavern are deeply alien to him. He spots an empty stool near the fireplace. It is one of the smaller, standard-sized stools, not one of the heavily reinforced ones. Elian, from behind the bar, sees what is about to happen. He opens his mouth to call out a warning, but it is too late. The young troll, in his eagerness to find a seat and become less conspicuous, lumbers over to the stool and, with a distinct lack of foresight, plops his entire, considerable weight down upon it. The result is both immediate and spectacular. The poor, unsuspecting stool does not stand a chance. It gives a single, sharp, despairing crack and then utterly disintegrates. Its 4 legs splaying out in different directions, its seat splintering into a dozen pieces. The troll, his intended perch having vanished from beneath him, lands on the flagstone floor with a heavy, earth-shaking thud that makes the mugs on the bar rattle. For a moment, there is a stunned silence, and then the harpies erupt in a chorus of cruel, shrieking laughter. They point their scaly fingers at the poor, embarrassed troll, their squawks of derision echoing through the cavern. "Look at the clumsy giant," one of them screeches. "He can't even sit without breaking things." The young troll's brutish, lumpy face, which is usually a pale, swampy green, flushes a deep, dark, mortified shade of crimson. He looks down at the splintered wreckage of the stool beneath him, and his great, broad shoulders slump. He looks utterly, completely, and profoundly ashamed. In this moment, he is not a fearsome monster. He is an awkward teenager who has just done something clumsy in front of the entire school. He looks like he wants the very ground to open up and swallow him. This is a dangerous moment. A troll's shame can very quickly curdle into a hot, violent rage. He could easily lash out, smashing tables and chairs, his embarrassment transformed into destructive fury. Elian has seen it happen before. But he does not shout. He does not demand payment for the broken furniture. He knows that to do so would only fuel the troll's humiliation and make the situation worse. Instead, he employs his most trusted and effective tool, quiet, unassuming kindness. He places his cleaning cloth on the bar and walks calmly out from behind it. He ignores the cackling harpies. He walks directly over to the sprawled, miserable troll. The troll sees him coming and flinches, clearly expecting to be yelled at, perhaps even hit. But Elian simply stops beside him and looks down at the pile of splintered wood. He nudges a piece of a broken leg with the toe of his boot. He purses his lips thoughtfully. And then, in a calm, matter-of-fact voice, loud enough for the nearby harpies to hear, he says, "Ah, I've been meaning to get rid of that one. It was always wobbly." He does not look at the troll as he says this. He looks at the broken stool, as if the fault lay entirely with the shoddy craftsmanship of the furniture, and not with the creature who had just sat on it. He is offering the troll a gift, a small, plausible excuse, a way to save face. He is rewriting the narrative of the event from one of clumsy destruction to one of inevitable mechanical failure. He then turns to the embarrassed giant. "Here," he says, his voice still quiet and calm, "let's find you something a bit more reliable." He walks over to a darker corner of the room and retrieves a different piece of furniture. It is not a stool. It is a low, wide, incredibly sturdy bench fashioned from a single massive slab of petrified wood, the same material as the bar. It is heavy, solid, and utterly unbreakable. He drags the heavy bench over and places it near the fire, a good, safe distance from the other patrons. "Try this," he says. The young troll looks from the splintered wreckage to the new, sturdy bench, and then up at Elian. His small, piggy eyes are wide with a look of stunned disbelief. He was expecting anger, ridicule, and a demand for payment. He has received only quiet understanding and a better place to set. Slowly, carefully, he gets to his feet. He lumbers over to the new bench and gently, tentatively, lowers himself onto it. It holds his weight without so much as a creak. A deep, rumbling sigh of relief escapes his great chest. He looks over at Elian, who is now calmly gathering the pieces of the broken stool. The troll's brutish face is still flushed, but the deep shame has been replaced by a different emotion. It is a look of profound, silent, and deeply moving gratitude. He cannot express it in words. His vocabulary is likely limited to grunts and simple one-syllable words. But his eyes say everything. They say, "Thank you. You did not laugh at me. You did not yell at me. You were kind." Elian simply gives a slight nod in return. He takes the splintered wood of the broken stool and tosses it into the fireplace, where it quickly catches, the flames flaring up for a moment. He has not only solved a problem, he has recycled it into warmth. He returns to his bar, the incident all but forgotten by everyone, except the young, clumsy troll, who now sits peacefully on his sturdy new bench, a loyal and grateful customer for life. And Elian is reminded, once again, of a simple, fundamental truth of his profession. The creatures who come to his tavern are not evil. They are not, for the most part, malicious. They are simply different. They are too large, too strange, too loud, too magical for the neat, orderly human world. And sometimes all a monster needs is not a hero to slay it, but a bartender who understands that some stools are just wobbly, and that a small act of kindness is a more powerful tool than any sword or spell. The night has grown old and weary. The air in the tavern, once thick with a chaotic symphony of sounds and smells, has now thinned out, settling into a comfortable, sleepy quiet. The last of the glimmer-wisp mead has been drunk, the last of the harpy gossip has been whispered, and the last of the day's energy has finally, thankfully, dissipated. It is time to close. But Elian does not shout "last call" into the room. Such a crude, jarring announcement would be deeply out of character for both him and his establishment. The gulping maw does not close with a bang, but with a slow, olfactory fade. His signal is a ritual, a specific, deliberate action that is understood by all of his regulars. He reaches under the bar to a low, dark, and rarely visited shelf. From this shelf, he retrieves a small, specific set of mugs. There are only 4 of them. They are made of a rough, unglazed gray stone, and they are stained with centuries of use. These are the gargoyle mugs. Gargoyles are infrequent but memorable customers. They only come in on nights of a full moon, and their drink of choice is a strange alchemical concoction of rainwater, ground-up limestone, and a single drop of basilisk venom, which gives it a certain zest. The drink itself is harmless to them, but it leaves behind a residue in the mugs, a thick, gray mineral sludge that, over time, develops a truly and profoundly foul smell. It is a smell that defies easy description. It is a complex bouquet of wet, crumbling cement, ancient pigeon droppings, and a faint, sharp chemical tang that stings the nostrils. It is, without a doubt, the single most unpleasant smell in Elian's considerable olfactory library. And now he begins to clean them. He fills a bucket with hot water, his movements slow and deliberate. He brings the 4 mugs to the bar, and one by one he submerges them in the water and begins to scrub them with a stiff, bristly brush. The effect is immediate and potent. The hot water activates the dried residue, releasing the full, magnificent horror of its stench into the air. The smell does not just fill the room, it invades it. It is a thick, tangible presence, a foul-smelling fog that creeps into every corner of the tavern. It is Elian's secret weapon, his gentlest and most effective tool for clearing out the last of the stragglers. The patrons react instantly. The remaining harpies, who had been dozing at their table, suddenly jerk awake. They sniff the air, their sharp, beaked faces wrinkling in disgust. The smell is an affront to their delicate avian sensibilities. With a series of offended squawks and a great dramatic flurry of wings, they launch themselves into the air and flutter hastily out the door, muttering curses about the declining standards of the establishment. The young troll, who had been peacefully admiring the sturdiness of his new bench, gets a whiff of the gargoyle mug aroma. His large, flat nose twitches. The smell is vaguely reminiscent of a particularly unpleasant swamp he once had to cross, and it brings back bad memories. He gives Elian a final grateful nod, and with a slow, lumbering gait, he makes his way out into the cool night air. The imps in the rafters, who are usually the last to leave, are no match for the stench. With a chorus of high-pitched, annoyed chittering, they abandon their perches and swarm out of a high, broken window like a cloud of angry, sulfur-scented gnats. One by one, the last of the patrons are driven out, not by a shout or a command, but by the sheer, overwhelming power of a bad smell. It is the most passive-aggressive last call in the world, and it is perfectly, wonderfully effective. Soon the tavern is empty. The sounds of chittering, squawking, and grumbling have faded, leaving only the gentle crackle of the fire and the deep, resonant breathing of the slumbering hellhound. The great iron-banded door is swung shut, and the heavy crossbar is lowered into place with a solid, satisfying thump. The gulping maw is now closed to the world. But the tavern is not entirely empty. There are 3 beings left. The sleeping hellhound, who is more a piece of living furniture than a customer, Elian, the master of the house, and, of course, Old Man Grok. The golem has not moved from his stool at the end of the bar. The foul, eye-watering stench of the gargoyle mugs does not affect him.
He has no nose. He has no lungs. He has no need to leave. He simply sits, a silent, unmoving, moss-covered sentinel. This is the final, quietest part of their daily ritual. Grok is the last one left, every single night. He does not need to stay. He has a small, quiet cave he calls home, deep in the nearby hills. But he always stays. He remains on his stool, a great, silent, and immensely comforting presence, while Elion performs his closing duties. He is the unofficial, unpaid night watchman, the tavern's silent guardian. Elion finishes cleaning the last of the foul-smelling mugs, his eyes watering slightly from the effort. He rinses them, dries them, and places them back on their low, dark, and thankfully distant shelf, where they will wait for the next full moon. He then begins the long, slow, meditative process of cleaning up the night's chaos, and Grok watches him, his blank, stone face a mask of silent companionship. The golem's presence transforms the lonely, tedious chore of cleaning into something else entirely. It becomes a shared, quiet activity. Elion sweeps up the shed harpy feathers and the dropped imp's pebbles, and he does not feel alone. He mops up the last of the spilled ale, and he feels a sense of peaceful camaraderie. Grok is his witness, his silent partner in the restoration of order. Their relationship is one of profound, unspoken understanding. Elion provides a place of welcome and a daily mug of dusty water, and Grok, in return, provides his silent, unwavering, stony presence. He is the guardian who ensures that the bartender is never truly alone at the end of a long, hard night. He is the final patron, the one who never leaves, the quiet, steadfast heart of the tavern. And as Elion moves through the empty, silent room, his broom whispering against the flagstones, he is deeply grateful for the company of the old, mossy, silent golem at the end of his bar.
The great crossbar is home in its iron brackets. The door is sealed, and the last of the foul gargoyle stench has finally dissipated, leaving behind the familiar, comfortable musk of the tavern at rest. The gulping maw is closed for the night. The performance is over. And now, in the profound, comforting quiet, the real work begins. The cleanup. This is a solitary task, a slow, methodical ritual that Elion performs every single night. The tavern is empty, save for the 3 silent beings who call it home. The slumbering hellhound, whose fiery breath creates a gentle flickering glow in the hearth. Old Man Grok, the unmoving stone sentinel at the end of the bar. And Elion himself, the sole agent of order in this chaotic world. He starts with the floor. He takes up a long-handled broom, its bristles made from the tough, springy reeds of the swamp, and begins to sweep. But he is not just sweeping up dirt and dust. He is sweeping up the physical remnants of his patrons, a collection of strange and wonderful detritus. He sweeps up a small pile of glossy black harpy feathers from the area around their table, their iridescent sheen catching the firelight. He sweeps up a handful of small, smooth pebbles that the imps had been using as game pieces in the rafters. He sweeps up a few dried brown leaves that were tracked in on the boots of a traveling dryad. Each pile of debris is a small, physical story, a quiet reminder of the beings who passed through his doors tonight. Next, he moves to the tables. Armed with his trusty damp cloth and a bucket of clean water, he begins to wipe down the surfaces. But again, he is cleaning more than just spilled ale. On one table, he finds a patch of faint, shimmering, translucent slime. It is ectoplasm, left behind by a ghostly patron who had phased through the wall for a quick, silent drink. It is cold to the touch and dissolves with a faint, sighing sound when he wipes it with his cloth. On another table, the one where the harpies were sitting, the wood is covered in a series of thin, sharp, angry-looking scratches. These are not from claws. These are from the sharp, pointed tips of their beaks, where they had been pecking at the wood out of boredom or irritation. He will have to sand these down tomorrow to prevent splinters. On the floor, near the hearth, he finds a small, shimmering puddle. It is not water. It is a pool of pure, condensed starlight, left behind by a visiting celestial, a creature of light and order who sometimes stops in for a glass of glimmer-wisp mead. The puddle is beautiful, but it is also dangerously pure. He cannot simply mop it up. He carefully coaxes the shimmering liquid onto a special, magically inert shard of obsidian and carries it outside, where he releases it into the night sky. It ascends with a soft, musical chime, a tiny, fleeting star returning to the heavens. Each mess is a puzzle, a unique janitorial challenge that requires a specific solution. He has learned which substances can be cleaned with simple water, which require a special alchemical solvent, and which are best left to evaporate on their own. He moves through the tavern with a quiet, practiced efficiency, a master of monstrous housekeeping. His work is accompanied by a soft, rhythmic soundtrack, the gentle swish-swish of his broom on the flagstones, the wet, rasping sound of his cloth on the wooden tables, the soft clink of mugs being collected and stacked, and underpinning it all, the deep, steady breathing of the hellhound and the profound, absolute silence of the golem. He works in a state of comfortable, meditative silence. His mind is empty of worries, of anxieties, of the complex social calculations of the day. There is only the simple, satisfying reality of the task at hand, the transformation of a messy, chaotic space into a clean, orderly one. It is a deeply satisfying process. He finds a strange joy in the simple, physical act of setting his world right. He mends a small claw mark on a chair leg, a parting gift from a grumpy gnoll, by rubbing it with a special waxy paste. He finds a single shed snake scale under the Gorgon's table, as thin and as sharp as a razor blade, and he carefully picks it up and places it in a small box of useful odds and ends. He scrubs a stubborn, sticky porcupine earwax from the floor near the fireplace. These are the unglamorous, unseen tasks that keep the tavern running. This is the quiet, essential labor that makes the chaos of the next day possible. There is a story in every stain, a memory in every piece of refuse. The ectoplasm reminds him of the ghost's sad, silent eyes. The harpy feathers remind him of their shrill, indignant laughter. The starlight puddle reminds him of the brief, breathtaking beauty of the celestial's presence. As he cleans, he is not just wiping away messes. He is archiving the day's events, committing them to memory, before setting the stage for a new set of stories tomorrow. He is the tavern's historian, its janitor, and his priest. Finally, after what seems like hours of quiet, methodical work, the job is done.
The floors are swept, the tables are clean, the mugs are washed and stacked, and the strange, exotic messes have all been dealt with. The tavern is once again clean, quiet, and orderly, basking in the warm, gentle glow of the dying fire. Elian stands in the center of the room, his hands on his hips, and surveys his work. He feels a deep, profound sense of peace and satisfaction. It is the quiet pride of a craftsman who has completed his work well. He has taken the wild, chaotic energy of his monstrous clientele, and he has tamed it, he has ordered it, he has put it to bed for the night. The tavern is silent now, save for the gentle crackling of the embers and the soft, rumbling snores of the hellhound. He looks over at the end of the bar, at the great, silent stone figure of Old Man Grok, who has been his steadfast companion throughout this long, solitary task. Elian gives a slight, tired smile and a small nod. The golem does not respond, of course, but Elian feels a sense of acknowledgement, a silent, well done, passing between them. The aftermath is over, the cleanup is complete, and the quiet, weary bartender can finally, truly rest.
The last of the sweeping is done. The last of the mugs is dry. The tavern, now scrubbed clean of the day's chaos, settles into a deep and final quiet. The embers in the great stone hearth have burned down to a soft, pulsing orange glow, casting long, sleepy shadows that dance and sway like tired ghosts. The hellhound is a great, dark, motionless lump by the fire, lost in whatever fiery dreams hell beasts have. The gulping maw is finally at peace, a sleeping giant awaiting the dawn. Elian, our weary bartender, performs one final ritual. It is a ritual for himself. He takes a single, small, clean glass from the shelf. Not a heavy earthenware mug or a delicate crystal goblet, but a simple, unadorned glass tumbler. He goes to the covered pail of clean water he keeps for his most discerning and most silent customer. He pours himself a small amount of the cool, clear water. He does not add the mineral dust. His own biology does not require it. He then does something he never does during business hours. He walks around to the front of the bar, the customer's side, and he sits. He chooses the stool right next to the one occupied by Old Man Grok. For the first time all day, he is not a server, not a keeper, not a cleaner. He is a patron in his own establishment. He and the golem sit there together in a comfortable, companionable silence. Two figures bathed in the soft, dying light of the fire. Elian holds the cool glass in his hands, his fingers tracing the faint condensation on its surface. He does not drink immediately. He simply sits and he reflects. He thinks about the long, strange, and utterly exhausting day that has just passed. He thinks about the gelatinous cube and its messy, innocent passage through his tavern. He thinks about the harpies and their petty, noisy grievances, and his own small, quiet act of honeyed diplomacy. He thinks about the deep, ancient sadness in the Minotaur's eyes, a sadness that no amount of stout could ever truly wash away. He thinks about the silent, psychic chess game with the mind flayer, a battle won not with strength, but with the profound, unassailable power of the mundane. He thinks about the siren's song, that brief, breathtaking moment of pure, unexpected beauty that had silenced the entire room and transformed it into a cathedral. He thinks about the young, clumsy troll and the look of profound, silent gratitude in his eyes after a small, simple act of kindness. He thinks about the strange, wonderful, and often disgusting messes he has just spent the last few hours cleaning up. The ectoplasm, the feathers, the starlight, the claw marks. Each one a souvenir, a physical memory of the beings who had shared this space with him for a few hours. And as he sits there, swirling the clear water in his glass, a deep and simple truth settles over him. A truth he has known for years, but has never quite put into words. His job is not about serving drinks. Not really. Anyone could learn to pour ale into a mug or mix a foul-smelling concoction for a gargoyle. His real job, his true calling, is something far more important. He is a purveyor of sanctuary. He is a keeper of a safe harbor. He has created in this dark, damp, forgotten corner of the world a place where the monstrous can be mundane. He has built a space where beings who are hunted, feared, vilified, and misunderstood by the outside world can come and simply be. In the gulping maw, the terrifying Minotaur is just a quiet old man who wants to be left alone with his memories. The treacherous siren is just a sad, lonely woman who sometimes needs to sing. The terrifying, all-powerful mind flayer is just an intellectual snob who enjoys a quiet, challenging game. The clumsy, destructive troll is just an awkward teenager who needs a sturdy place to sit. Elion's Tavern is a great equalizer. It strips away the myth, the legend, the fear, and it reveals the simple, universal truths that lie beneath. The truth that even the most fearsome of creatures can feel loneliness. The truth that even the most alien of beings can appreciate a moment of beauty. The truth that even the most powerful of entities can be defeated by boredom. And the truth that even the most destructive of monsters can be soothed by a small, quiet act of kindness. He provides a space where they do not have to perform their monstrosity. They can let down their guard, take off their metaphorical armor, and be, for a few hours, simply themselves. It is a rare and precious gift. And in return, they give him their stories, their strange and wonderful currencies, and their quiet, respectful patronage. It is a fair and noble exchange. Elion finally raises his glass. He looks at the blank, mossy stone face of his silent companion, Old Man Grok, the most steadfast and loyal friend a man could ever ask for. He gives a small, almost imperceptible nod. He does not say cheers or good health. He simply thinks it. He wishes all of them, the strange, chaotic, wonderful creatures of his tavern, a quiet and peaceful night.
He wishes them safety from the heroes who would hunt them, from the villagers who would fear them, and from their own deep inner sadness. He takes a slow, thoughtful sip of the cool, clean water. It is the best drink he has had all day. He sits for a few moments more, savoring the silence, the peace, the deep satisfaction of a hard day's work well done. He feels the weariness in his bones, a good, honest ache that promises a deep and dreamless sleep. It is time. He finishes his water, drains the last drop from the glass. He stands up, his joints creaking softly in the quiet room. He walks back behind his bar, his home, his sanctuary, and with a final, deliberate movement, he places his empty glass down on the clean, dark, petrified wood of the bar. The final sound of the night is not a roar, not a squawk, not a song. It is a soft, solid, definitive thump as the glass makes contact with the wood. It is the sound of a period at the end of a long and complicated sentence. It is the sound of a story ending. It is the sound of peace. The sound echoes for a moment in the now silent tavern, and then it too fades away, leaving only the darkness, the quiet, and the soft, gentle glow of the dying embers.